NFL training camp is getting closer and closer, so we're going to continue our positional preview series for the Cleveland Browns upcoming season. This time we're going to be looking at the Browns cornerback room. I feel like this room has plenty of high-end talent, at least what we've seen in the past, but I don't think they were necessarily put in the best spot to succeed last year under Joe Woods' defensive system. A lot of soft zone when I feel like a lot of this room's talent is more in grabbing a man and just sticking onto them on man defense. Hopefully Jim Schwartz has a bit of a better plan in mind that suits their talents a little better. So we're going to start talking about some of these specific players in the room, starting with Denzel Ward. He, in my opinion, is still the default defender to put on the opposing team's biggest threat at wide receiver. He's entering the second year of his tremendously huge 6-year contract extension, so he is locked up, at least contractually, for this Browns team for the foreseeable future. That is elite pay for what you hope to be an elite player. He did have a down year, but I feel like a lot of those hopes are rooted in good faith. I do feel like it is, you deserve to have expectations for Denzel Ward because we've seen what he can do on the field, and I am hoping that a lot of his down play last season was a result of that system that might not be best suited for Denzel Ward. Last year, he played in 14 games, had 3 interceptions, 15 pass deflections, and 2 scoop sixes. He had 2 fumble recoveries, both of them for touchdowns. I feel like sometimes I hear the phrase injury prone thrown around about Denzel Ward. I personally think that that's a pretty inaccurate tag that he gets. He's never really missed a huge chunk of the season in the time he's been with the Browns in the NFL. It just so happens that every season he does tend to miss a few games here and there, but there's never been a debilitating, season-ending injury for Denzel Ward, at least so far in this career, knock on wood. However, in this stage of his career, I do think it is more notable when he's not playing at a high level than when he is. So that's why when I say this was a down year for Denzel Ward, I still think in terms of being an average, in terms of NFL cornerbacks on the whole, I still feel like it was a good year in that respect. But for the contract he just got and for the sky-high expectation that Denzel Ward has, maybe it didn't quite reach those. But again, I do feel like it is a safe bet to say that at some point this year he will reach those again, and we will see more of that Warden shutdown corner that we've grown to expect from Denzel Ward. Moving on to Greg Newsome, entering the 3rd year of his rookie deal. He is the Browns' most recent first-round pick out of Northwestern. Last season in 15 games, he had 6 deflections, 42 total tackles, and half of a sack. And the pure stats might not jump out at you, but just watching Browns games and some of the more advanced analytics that he has, it does make it apparent that Greg Newsome is a great talent. He's constantly where he's supposed to be. He hardly ever is completely burnt on a route that an opposing receiver is running. Watching him play does leave you with good security that it's not just Denzel Ward and who else. Greg Newsome is a legitimate starting talent. In a lot of other NFL rooms, he could be the true number 1 corner, but he's just stuck on a depth chart with more elite talent around him. He should have no problem making the starting 11 for every game for the Browns this season, I'm sure of it. Moving on to Martin Emerson, or MJ Emerson, whichever you want to say, entering his 2nd season. Last year, he was a rookie 3rd-round pick out of Mississippi State, and I feel like he did have a tremendous rookie season, especially considering his draft position. I would be happy with the production he put up if he was a 1st-round pick. The fact that the Browns grabbed him in the 3rd round and he had the season that he had, I'm super encouraged moving forward. He was the highest PFF graded corner, which I know some people don't like PFF grades, and I think it's just an indicator that he had a really solid year. I don't necessarily think it definitely for sure makes him the best corner. I just think the numbers do back up what we're seeing on the field, which is that Martin Emerson he did have a really good rookie season. Now, with some of that, maybe because he didn't face the toughest matchup on opposing teams, sure, but there were plenty of actual, NFL elite receivers that he did play against that he more than held his own end up against, including Mike Evans, where that game the Browns played against Tampa Bay, Martin Emerson essentially locked Mike Evans down. I know Tom Brady didn't have his best season, maybe Father Time caught up with him, but to have the game that he had against Mike Evans, I feel like that is just an example of what he could be in the future moving forward. He played in all 17 games, had 15 deflections, 63 total tackles, and 1 sack, and I do feel like I'm very confident in him moving forward. Moving on to AJ Green. This is an example of an undrafted rookie who was just kind of bouncing, who was getting waved up and down from the Cleveland's practice squad and the regular roster. He made himself a nice little spot in the roster for himself, signed a 1-year deal this offseason, so the organization clearly sees some value in him. They didn't want to lose him, at least not before giving him at least one more shot. He played in all 17 games last season, so he had a consistent NFL roster spot, had 1 interception, 1 pass deflection, 18 total tackles. He did only play in 13% of the defensive snaps he was available for, played 50% of the special teams snaps, so he's more of a special teams guy. And while he certainly isn't a headliner of this room, or he's probably not going to be a starter anytime soon, he has carved himself a decent role on this team. I do feel like that is to be commended, especially for where he was coming out being an undrafted rookie. But his spot on the roster I don't think is necessarily safe, as the team is bringing in some new talent, such as Cameron Mitchell. He is entering his rookie year, 5th-round pick out of Northwestern. Last season with Northwestern, he played in 11 games, had 1 interception, 9 pass deflections, both a forced fumble and a fumble recovery, as well as 52 total tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, and 1 sack. So being a 5th-round pick does come with a bit lower expectations. It might even be a question mark of if he'll even make the initial 53-man roster out of training camp. But, however, again, like I mentioned with Martin Emerson, I didn't think he would excel as much as he did as a 3rd-round pick, and there are draft surprises every year in every stage of the draft, and there are ties with him and Greg Newsome coming out of that Northwestern program. It'll be interesting to see how Cameron Mitchell performs. He'll certainly have a much improved wide receiver room to go up against in training camp, so if he can excel in the offseason things, in preseason games, I feel like he could have a decent shot of making the roster. We also have Thomas Graham, 3rd-year player. He's been up and down practice squads and waivers with both the Bears and the Browns. He did play 7 games with Cleveland last season, but he didn't really see too much of the field. I'm not saying that he will for sure not make the team, but I'll go so far as to say that his spot is definitely up for grabs. He's going to have to earn a spot on the roster if he is to make it. We also have Caleb Biggers, who is an undrafted rookie out of Boise State. He also spent his early collegiate career with Bowling Green. It would be a surprise if he made the initial roster, but again, maybe, like I mentioned with AJ Green, maybe he does start on the practice squad, but some injuries happen, he gets called up, and he has a good initial run. That might, springboard his career into bigger heights. Who knows? Then you have Mike Ford entering his 6th season. He last played for the Atlanta Falcons. He did play in all 17 games, mostly as a special teams piece. He only played in 7% of the defensive snaps for Atlanta. Maybe Bubba Ventrone really likes what he sees out of him on the special teams unit, and he stumps for him to get a spot lower on that roster. Who knows? You have Chris Westry entered the NFL in 2019. His early career a bit hampered by injuries. I believe he spent his entire rookie season, or at least most of it, on IR. Last year, though, not injury-related, just didn't earn a spot on an NFL roster. It is a low-risk signing. He signed for 1 year, pretty cheap. It'll be cool if he's anything, but yeah, this is just a low-risk, potentially high-reward move here for the Browns. And then you have a very recent addition, man who goes by 2 names. You have BoPete Keyes, which is how he's addressed on the official roster, but if you go to the official tweet where they announced the signing, he is listed as Thacarius Keyes, but BoPete is what is on the official roster, what he seems to be preferred to be called as, so that's what I'll call him, at least as long as he's on the Browns, as long as I'm talking about him. Again, very recent pickup with Dawson Deaton being waived with an IR designation. He's bounced around waivers since entering the league in 2020. This is probably mostly a depth piece, but you can't really have too much depth at cornerback. The lighting has gotten significantly worse since when I started this video, so I'm sure it was very entertaining to see the gradual decrease of light, but that's going to be it from me for this video. Thank you so much for watching. You can let me know what you think about this Browns cornerback room down in the comments below. I will see you at the next one.